Hello, sourcers. I'm about to blow your minds. The greatest tool that procurement people have, everybody hates it. I got you hooked, didn't I? Now you're asking yourself, what are you talking about, Joe? What's the greatest procurement tool that procurement people have? It's the RFP. It's the request for proposal. And I'll get into what an RFP is in a second. Quick update. As I started editing this video, I noticed there was like a fuzzy on my face. And I'm going through the whole, should I reshoot the entire video without the fuzzy? And I went through 3 versions and reshoots of that intro. So I'm letting you know that I acknowledge that I have a fuzzy on my face. I respect you as an audience, and in normal situations, I would probably reshoot it, but I just feel like it's just gonna mess up the whole flow. So I'm keeping it, and then the fuzzy pops back up again because I kept wiping my face off. So it shows up periodically again later in the video because I'm constantly wiping my face. So, sorry, I hope you do not view that as a sign of disrespect for not reshooting that section. Back to the video. Customers, suppliers, procurement people. Nobody likes doing an RFP. Suppliers hate doing a request for proposal because that means they may potentially lose business. So the suppliers that are incumbents, they hate it. Net new suppliers, while they get excited because there's a potential for a new sale, RFPs are messy, it's a lot of work, and it's not guaranteed that they're gonna win the business. Customers hate doing RFPs because it's a lot of work. They have to define their requirements. They may lose out because a procurement department is putting pressure on somebody, or a financial department is putting pressure on a customer to look at other options to save money. And procurement people don't love RFPs because they're a lot of work. They're a lot of work for procurement people, and customers and suppliers hate doing them. So it sometimes feels like a lose-lose situation, except that it isn't, because you tend to save money when you do RFPs, or at a minimum, you know that you're getting a decent price on the market. RFPs provide procurement departments and business units good information on their spend and how they sit in a market perspective. But people don't love them. So we're gonna talk about RFPs today, and we're gonna try to make people appreciate the greatest tool in the procurement tool belt. Why is the RFP, the request for proposal, why is that the greatest tool for a procurement organization? It's because it's pure information. You are creating leverage. And the process also tends to educate the customers about what is available on the market. And so we're clear, there are at least 3 or 4 options in the request for family. There is a request for a quote, which is a simple request to go out to a supplier or a series of suppliers on the pricing of their products or services. There's a request for information, where you're just trying to figure out what is out in the market, what solutions are available, and then there is ultimately a request for a proposal. That is typically the most sophisticated version, where you are doing a full-blown bidding event, you are getting information, and you are getting your customers to articulate a very specific business need that needs to be solved or improved. And that's where the true value of an RFP comes from. Because you're getting everybody together. You're getting suppliers, you're getting procurement people, you're getting customers, you're getting IT people. Everybody's coming together, and they're helping to build out a solution to a business problem. And you're looking for someone to come in and saying, I can help with this, I have this technology, or I have this expertise that can make a better outcome for your business. The drawback to an RFP is you have to put in the work to define your requirements, to pick the right suppliers, to ask the right questions, and that's where things tend to get a little problematic. People are typically busy in their day-to-day jobs, and not everyone wants to invest the time to do an RFP. When you have existing suppliers, if you have an incumbency situation where you may have a customer base that is comfortable, they're familiar with an existing supplier and a service base, they may be hesitant to change a service provider because they like the resources, they like the workers. So now you have a situation where maybe the supplier and the customer kind of working together, not against, but in somewhat of an opposition against the procurement department or finance department if we're trying to drive towards a better savings goal. So these events can be emotional, they can be complicated, and there's a whole litany of business drivers in the background, like you don't want to change, or you might have a primary goal coming up that tends to delay an RFP event. RFPs have been around forever. What has changed? Why are you making a video about this now, Joey? COVID. Since COVID, especially in the labor market, we're seeing labor rates have risen fairly substantially, anywhere from 12 to 22%, depending on the type of service. So labor rates have increased. Labor rates have increased because workers over the last 2.5 years have moved around quite a bit. So let's go back to the original problem of an RFP in an incumbency situation. Sometimes customers get very attached to the resources that are provided in a previous engagement, in a previous contract, and they're hesitant to move. But what happens over the last 2.5 years, if there's been such significant change in the labor market that people have been moving around quite a bit, do those coveted, loved resources, are they still there? Or are they there in such a frequency that the service has remained the same? And over the course of the last couple of years, if prices have increased, if the contract allowed for some cost of living increases or inflationary increases, and your rates keep going up, now is an excellent time to determine if you can find another supplier that's hungrier, that's more aggressive, and that can provide the service at the same or lower cost with better resources. And when you have hard deliverables, that is a very scary proposition. If you're trying to hit milestones and goals, and some procurement joker is knocking on your door saying, I think you should RFP this, it could be hard to listen, and it could be hard to dedicate the time at this particular moment to do an RFP. But in many cases, you may need months to maybe even years or 18 months to set up a proper RFP scenario so you're properly bidding the event and you have all of the right materials. And let's not forget that just because you're putting something out for bid doesn't mean you necessarily need to change the supplier that you're working with. A lot of suppliers, again, I noted that they hate RFPs because it's their business to lose. In many scenarios, when you even mention an RFP, suppliers will try to proactively get in front of it and try to cut off the RFP and provide reductions. I think you should definitely listen to those options because, again, an RFP is a very labor-intensive event for all parties. But at a certain point, if a supplier keeps dropping their price year over year, if you threaten to RFP, also you shouldn't just keep threatening the RFP to get pricing down. You have to be very serious about it. But if they keep offering to drop the price multiple times, that means there's probably a very high margin or some other business driver. You should explore an RFP at that point. But if it's the first time and they knock off a significant amount of money, it may be beneficial to all parties involved to take the discount and walk away. Since we're talking about RFPs, allow me to provide a few bits of insight on how to make an RFP better. As I mentioned earlier, they are time-consuming because they require requirements. They have to have well-defined goals and objectives, whether it's pricing or service outcomes, that should be defined on the paper. In my experience, RFPs tend to be rushed. There's never enough time to do them. There's never enough time to respond. There's never enough time to make the transformation should another supplier be selected. So the initial requirements that go out the door are usually not great. And then, because they're not great, the suppliers responding to them require a lot of personalized attention or ask a lot of additional questions, which tend to frustrate the business customers. So to the business customers and to the procurement people that are participating in RFPs, make your requirements good. Go through the efforts to make sure that the materials are not just cookie cutter, and I'm sure that you're operating from a template, or you can find a template online, but make sure you take the extra time and energy to really define the things that you want from the suppliers so they ask less questions and your selection and bidding process goes more smoothly. I cannot emphasize this enough, and nobody really takes the time to do it properly. So if you take one thing away from this video, if you're doing an RFP, breathe, sit down, go through the materials, and really be clear about the things that you want. It doesn't have to be 11 pages of want, but be very specific about the outcome or the things that you need the supplier to deliver. Because if you're not, you're going to get a lot of wacky responses and you're going to get so much variance that you're going to have to take weeks to untangle it. Now let me talk to the suppliers that are responding to the RFPs. especially suppliers that may be familiar with the company that issued the RFP. So you've done work for them, or you're currently doing work, or you're the incumbent. If you know the company, leverage that knowledge and experience. And this is the thing that a lot of companies tend to shy away from. Call us out on our BS. If you walk in and you know that a company has problems in certain areas, and you're talking about it amongst yourselves, or maybe even within your own little circle of suppliers, because you're all chatty Cathys and you all talk amongst yourselves. If you know that there is a problem and then you tend to shy away from it because you don't want to upset a customer, that's a huge mistake. Take your knowledge, call out the company for the problems, show your expertise, and then that is a way to exhibit that you have insights and knowledge that will help the company move past those problems and get superior outcomes. I don't know why suppliers are so afraid to do this, but you shouldn't be. You should embrace it, and I'm sure you can all find a very professional way to provide feedback to a potential customer, but highlight issues that you see. Make sure they understand that those are areas that will cost them more money throughout the process, and that you have to build in extra budget or extra services to resolve those issues. Call those things out specifically. A lot of times, if it's a data transformation project, most companies have terrible data quality, and then nobody ever wants to fix the data. So then you go in and you implement a new tool, and the solution technically works just fine, except that all of the data that you've been collecting for the last 10 years is garbage, and no one wants to go back and fix the metadata. Take the time to call out these problems, highlight that there's an expense to that, and whether you do it as a company or the company invests in internal resources to fix the problem, highlight those problems. If you're a newer company and maybe you don't have experience with the company that issued the RFP, don't be too salesy. That might work for smaller companies or immature procurement departments, but larger companies, older companies, when a company comes in and does the rah-rah sales pitch and we can do everything under the sun and we're magical and anything that you want, people are going to see right through it. Be honest about the limitations of your product or service. Be very clear on what the thing was intended and designed to do, and be very clear about the things that it doesn't do. Because if you wish upon a star and you promise all of these things and then you're 6 months into the implementation and it can't do any of those things or it requires all this customization, people are going to be angry. Throughout my 2-decade-plus career, I have to say that RFP events are typically, people tend to avoid them. And over the last few months, I've seen a significant number of my customers tend to agree to do an RFP event and explore superior pricing. And again, it's because of the inflationary pressures that have been put upon the market in the last few months. And it's also because some suppliers have gotten complacent. So if you are a supplier watching this video and you're like, oh, they're not going to do it, think again. So between a recession, inflation, prices going up, people are ready for a change. They're ready to explore new options. So as a supplier, if you are thinking that your customer may go out to an RFP, I would highly recommend going to them proactively with solutions to drive prices down right now. And using technology, we should be exploring all of those things to potentially flatten out the prices and the increases that have occurred over the last 3 years. So there it is. The RFP, the request for proposal, the greatest tool in the procurement professional's toolbox. The pros and the cons, why people love them, why people hate them. I highly encourage, in this market, in this economy, to start to ramp up and explore your RFP options. Customers, procurement people, suppliers, this is the time. If you have questions about RFPs, feel free to leave them in the comments section below or in the LinkedIn question section. I don't know where you're watching these videos from, but wherever you're finding them, leave a question or comment. I really appreciate you watching this video today, and I'll be back with another one in 2 weeks. Take care.